Welcome to the darkness. Fear will let you in. The root of all exclusion. Who is out and who is in? Systems of belonging lock us in a cage. We fear those who are different, refuse to see their pain. In the heart of every man, there's a song that love began. Oh love, objectify the human with anger, fear, and shame.
Hi everybody, welcome along to this special episode of Monday Night Live. It's great to be back with you again on this, the most, what some might say auspicious, others might say infamous day when we heard about the traffic light system which kicks into gear on Friday. I don't know about you, but I've never been so confused over three simple lights in my entire life. But there we go, that's another story. We might discuss that tonight. Now, before I introduce the two men that I have here with me to talk about this important issue around vaccine mandates and passports, and can we improve them, can we make them better? Let me just get a couple of administrative things out of the way. If this is your first time here, welcome along. You're watching right now on the Monday Night Live Facebook page. So while you're there, if you haven't already, why not become a fan of the page? That way you'll get updated about all of the new content that we publish. Also, we have a YouTube channel. You can find that at mondaynightLiveshow.com. That's mondaynightLiveshow.com. Tonight's episode, tonight's broadcast will be available on the YouTube channel. It'll be premiering at midday tomorrow on there, so you can watch it again and you can share it from there. If you're not already a subscriber to that YouTube channel, why not go to mondaynightLiveshow.com, hit the subscribe and the little notifications bell, and that way you'll be kept up to date about all of the video content that we've got coming out. A huge thank you to all of our patrons at patreon.com/leftfootmedia. You guys are awesome. It's thanks to you that tonight's episode and all of the other great content that we produce is able to be made. Just by way of a reminder, if you're not already a patron and you want to support this independent media venture, if you become a contributor with $5 or more per month, you'll get access to some exclusive content, including a weekly podcast episode that we make available exclusively to our supporters at patreon.com/leftfootmedia. If you contribute $5 or more per month, you get four or five, depending on how long the month is, episodes of the Dispatches podcast every single month, exclusively available to our patrons. Today's episode, we talked about the arrival of the new variant. As the Collins variant departs, we have a new I was going to say Delta, but it's not Delta anymore, is it? A new COVID variant has arrived, and a whole lot more. So if you want to get access to that, patreon.com/leftfootmedia is all it takes. Right, without any further ado, let me introduce my panel tonight, and let's get straight into this conversation. So with me tonight, I have Nick Tuitasi from Family First New Zealand. He is the Pacific Director there. Welcome, Nick.
Talofa lava.
Great to have you with us. And on the other side of me, you can say that some might say I'm the rose between two thorns, or I'm the thorn between two roses. I don't know, but I've got Mike Shaw, who's the spokesman for New Zealand Teachers speaking out. Mike, it's great to have you with us.
Kia ora, Brendan. Kia ora, Nick.
Now, guys, let's just jump in straight into this a little bit, and we'll get to the meat of the issue. By the way, I should say, folks, we want to hear your questions and comments as well. So tonight is about interaction with you as well. So please let us know your comments and questions as we go, and I will do my best to ensure that we get lots of good questions submitted to our two panelists so that they can share their thoughts on what you have to say about all of this. So please do share your thoughts with us and let us know. Mike, I'll start with you, though, if I can, please. Just tell us a little bit about your group and the action that you're involved with when it comes to the issue of mandates.
Okay, so New Zealand Teachers Speaking Out with Science got incorporated 5th of November, Guy Fawkes Day, and our main purpose is to challenge the legality of the legal framework of the mandates. That's why we've formed. It's a group of caretakers, teachers, obviously, ECE workers, right through to principals, board of trustees meeting, ECE, anybody that you can think about in the education sector is involved in the group. And our main focus is, the legality or the illegality of the mandates. So,
tell me, Mike, just what is your passion for this group? What was it that brought you to this movement? You said, I've got to be involved in this, because it's you'd have to say, in the current climate, I would consider it a reasonably courageous thing to step out and say, well, I'm going to be a voice on this.
Well, probably it started on a personal level. Our integrated school up in Kaiko, here we could see it coming down the line, and as a board of trustees, we made a decision that we weren't going to have a vaccine bus on site, because we saw that as undermining parental rights, and that's probably when the conversations first started. And then we could see, where it was heading with the teacher mandates, and we knew that that was going to affect, at the beginning stage anyway, probably 20% of our staff were either vaccine hesitant or had already made up their mind. So really was the issue of trying to balance individual human rights with the whole do unto others kind of thing, the community, the group, the benefit of the whole community. And that's where I got involved. When I was a friend of mine in Whangarei said, Mike, we've formed this thing called NZT SOS. It's a bit like the doctors group. Do you want to get involved? And as I looked into it, I thought, no, this is a group that's actually focused on action. There was all kinds of other groups going on, and a lot of talk and raising a lot of issues, which was good. But NZT SOS seemed to me like a group that was actually going to do something. So that attracted me, when people are actually going to do something.
Awesome. Now, Nick, tell us about Family First and the campaign that you guys are running in regards to vaccine mandates.
Okay, well, thanks for the opportunity, Brendan. I think most people would know Family First. It's not a political party, it's just a lobby group. It used to be one man in a fax machine by the name of Bob McCoskrie, who has been doing it for 15 odd years, and good on him. I've only sort of come off the board. He asked me to come off the out of the grandstand, get onto the field and make some tackles. So I've been doing that for the last 3 years, just with the Pacific in particular. But he's always been an advocate, and we've always sort of wanted strong marriages, strong families. And he one day sat down with another educator saying, look, there's some real issues in relation to this forced mandate. So they created a petition or campaign back on the 8th of November, and we put it out there. And to date, we've got about 80,000 people who have signed sort of saying, we don't like where this is going. And so we're just giving it a nudge. Now, what we're pushing is we're not anti-vax, but we are, anti-gin testing. So let's bring that in. That's what we're saying, eh? Just give people an option. Let's not force people to get injected, because we're not a socialist country or a communist country. This is New Zealand. We're all free to make our decisions, and that's the way it should be. So we're just giving that, flying that flag and asking people to allow the testing, because whether you've had the double jab or not, you still need to be tested, because it doesn't stop you from getting it, and it doesn't stop you from passing it on. So all around the world, everyone's testing. So let's New Zealand, let's just follow.
Yeah, brilliant. And I should say that too. All three of us here, those who are watching and tuned in tonight, none of us are anti-vax. I think you'd have to say, Nick, probably that's become a convenient label, right, that gets thrown around to try and dismiss what are legitimate concerns here about the policy.
It does, and it's to silence people, I guess, and it's to stigmatize them so that they get quiet and they don't speak up. But yeah, like you guys, we're not against it. We're just saying, but just give us another option.
And Mike, what about, have you encountered much of that, Mike? That sort of,
absolutely.
You're the conspiracy theorist, you're the anti-vax, you're the anti-science.
Yeah. No, straight away, those labels come out, and that's just to try and discredit the other voice in this and the discussion. But we've got many people in our organisation who are actually fully vaccinated, but the issue is the mandatory side of it. The issue is the taking away of our basic freedoms. We would prefer to be treated like adults who can make up our own mind and given the right information and that sort of thing. So our first foray, if you like, was we took Ashley Bloomfield and Christopher Hipkins and the Attorney General David Parker to the High Court on the 8th of November, the same day that Nick and the guys started their petition, and was the whole basis of that case was challenging the lawfulness, in their Bill of Rights, as much as it still stands. I think it's the fourth principle in the Bill of Rights is that everyone has the right to refuse medical treatment, and so that was kind of where we went with that on the 8th, with our legal team, and unfortunately, the judge ruled against it, ruled in favour of the Crown, feeling that the perceived benefits of the mandates overrule that the Bill of Rights, which is a concern.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Tell me, that must have been challenging, that result when it came down the pipe.
Yeah, we were kind of realistic about, we were optimistic, but also we knew that winning the case was or losing the case was a possibility. We had already, probably what was more challenging was because our strategy was that we would appeal it straight away. And as we began to work out our appeal, the government, because the whole thing was about the lawfulness of it, and as we know, the government a few days ago rammed through changes to the law, basically making it lawful for them to inject anybody they want with whatever they want at any time. And so that was sort of really sunk the chances of the appeal. So that was a bit disappointing, but we got our whole approach. We got two cases. That was the first case. The second case is coming up early next year, and that one's going to be about the science of it. We're going to challenge the science of it. We've got a scientist, Peter McCulloch, giving evidence about the whole area of transmission and infection. We could talk a bit about that tonight if you want. And the second part is the impact of the mandates, the social impact, the economic impact, and even the educational impact, of course, whether all the disruption and all the division and all the harm that it's caused, whether that actually outweighs, we believe it outweighs any perceived benefit of the mandate. So we'll be taking that to court next year.
But before I throw back to Nick, tell me, Mike, your group's position on testing. Would you like to see that as part of the mandates as well?
I think that's an obvious thing to do. We even on a local level, our local school level, because every single teacher takes health seriously, especially the health of their students. Nobody wants to be responsible for bringing a virus into school. And so the most obvious thing to do is to get the rapid antigen testing, or even as a beginner, the saliva testing. We've got the saliva. I'm up in Northland. Anybody that wants to come into Northland has to do the saliva test, to get across the border. I've got friends who are getting tested twice a week because they travel. Yeah. And it's a real easy, simple thing to do. And for those border workers, it's free. But the crazy thing is, teachers can't get it.
Yeah.
We would love the teachers, vaccinated or unvaccinated, to be regular tested, because at the end of the day, it's the virus which is the enemy. If we want to put it that way, the virus is the issue. It's not the unvaccinated.
Yeah.
It's the So
That's
if we could
excellent.
get that.
Yeah, that's a great point, Mike. Yeah, spot on that final point about the enemy is the virus, not the unvaccinated, and that's where the risk lies too. A couple of comments before I ask Nick the next question. Jan and Andrea Lukic says, thanks, Nick. Appreciate your support on this. God bless. Sam Walker says, yes, Mike. Francine Knowles Weller says, it's Clause 11 of the Bill of Rights. Bernadette Anthony says, excellent, Cordero, Mike. Who else have we got here? Bernadette says, go NZTSOS. Here we go. Well said, Mike. So a lot of support for you guys obviously out there. I'll start with you on this one, Nick. Can you give those who are watching tonight some insights into how these mandates might actually be affecting like real Kiwis at the coalface who are just trying to earn an honest day's wage and feed their family?
Well, it's interesting because it's the unvexed and the vexed that are actually being affected. And this is the thing that we're so against, is dividing. We don't want the haves and the have-nots, which is, literally what it is. But just recently, a friend of mine, I had to go and see him today because one of the kids at school tested positive. So basically everybody around him was sent home. So he went home last week. 2 or 3 days later, did the test, went back to school. A couple of kids come up to him and go, oh, sir, I hear you got COVID. He goes, what do you mean? And he goes, oh, no. He said, no, where'd you hear that? Anyway, he walks into the DP's office and the DP goes, get out of here. I don't want you anywhere near me. And he's going, whoa, this is a guy who's double jabbed. And this is how they're treating them. I'm thinking, oh my goodness. So he just packed up and went home. He didn't go back over the weekend. I just checked on him, see if he was okay. And this morning I went out to walk around, Grayland Park with him just to see if he's okay. It's not just the unvaxxed, that everyone's sort of turning on each other. So, there's so many families that have lost their jobs too. And our heart goes out to those people. I've got a text today from a social service that 6 of their staff have been asked to stand down until they get vaccinated, and he was asking, hey, do you know anywhere I could get a job that being unvaxxed? There's 6 of them, and I'm thinking, well, man, that's a hard one. I'm going to take it to our family prayer, but that's really all I can do.
Yeah, gosh.
The families are really being affected, and that's where Family First, we step up and say, look, we don't like what's happening to these families. They're being divided now between the haves and the have-nots, and that's not what we need. We're thinking if you can bring in the testing, everyone can just get about their business, everyone gets tested, and, just keep moving, because that's the easy way for everyone after such a long lockdown. Let's get back up there. Let's work for our whānau. Let's get our, the wheels rolling, and let's get our country back on track.
Yeah, Nick, I think that point, and this is what Mary has said in her comment, there's a real fear in our country, and it's something I've been talking about for a while here on Left Foot Media as this sort of pandemic has evolved, is there's the pandemic, and then there's almost the hysteria that's added itself to the top of the pandemic, and that's the issue that needs to be addressed, right, Nick?
It is. And I'm going to go off track a little bit and just talk about my Pacific people.
Yeah.
I'm really concerned because they're just getting stirred along by our Pacific leaders, who are obviously, part of the government, and just rushing them right through this stuff, but they're not stopping to think about any other option. This is what the government's saying. We are the truth. There's only one option, and you're going our way. And we're saying, oh, I don't know. You can't force people to do things and take things away from them until they comply and say, well, that's your free choice, because that's just manipulation.
Yeah, that's right. Not much choice in that. What about you, Mike? What are some of the stories and the reactions you've had from people who are affected by this mandate?
Oh, it's quite heartbreaking. We've got over 500 members now just on our membership, let alone I think it's 3,600 in our Facebook following, and that's a private Facebook. So there's a lot of people that have been affected, and we've recently broken up into regions and done the call up and just checking on people, seeing how they're going, and it's quite traumatizing. I like to think of myself as being thick-skinned, but the amount of emotion out there, the amount of fear, uncertainty, the feeling of being devalued, even the family division, just hearing staff members talk about, that they may have a, division at home, and then they come to school and they're not sure where they fit into the school environment now, and it just ripples on. Then that affects the classroom, that affects the students, and for our smaller communities, it's trauma upon trauma. So we even today, I just quick ring around. One of our local schools, local primary school, won't be able to do anything tomorrow, but they can't get the relievers in. So they've already lost teachers. But particularly in Northland and some of the East Coast areas, some of these places, they call them hard to staff areas. So it's very, very difficult. The impact's been I got to say, some boards of trustees have been excellent. The boards of trustees and the principals are the meat in the sandwich. They've become the baddie. They've become the one that has to enforce these things and give the letters to the staff members and all that. Some of them have been really good. Some have been quite brutal. And but one of the common things is the teachers have felt totally let down by their union.
Yeah,
their union has just sided with the government, and and there was no vote, no consultation on it. Just came down as a directive. So we're seeing there small schools struggle. We're seeing if you've got a specialist kapahaka teacher, for example, they go it's just a ripple on thing. The other thing we're seeing is those who, particularly the younger ones, who have mortgages and families to feed, is they have gone and taken that first jab, not because they want to, but because they've got those responsibilities, and that's just a horrible kind of a psychological feeling that you've been backed into a corner, you've got no other choice, and against your will, you have to fill in the form saying I consent. And I know of teachers who have scribbled it out, written, I have been bullied into this and I don't want it, but I have no choice. And then they sign it with tears in their eyes.
Yeah.
Surely
That's
there's
not
a
informed
better
consent.
way.
No, that's not informed consent.
Surely there's a better way.
Yeah, I agree with you. It seems to me it's just a bit of common sense could be applied here, and a bit of cooperative leadership rather than this command from the top on down. Nick, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. That one thing that I find troubling, and Mike's already mentioned, that there's a lack of a political voice of opposition, really, or if you like, a political voice for those who are marginalised by this in general. And the unions traditionally have been one of those voices for teachers. They're that's one of the great ironies in all of this, really, is that the very politicians who often claim they're for the working man have now not only forgotten them, but have actually turned on them actively with these mandates. So what are your feelings, Nick, about this, just the lack of a strong political voice of opposition to represent these people who are marginalised here?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, we've been watching National try to find their feet, and they've had leadership issues, and right now they're in the midst of selecting their leader. I thought this would be an absolutely amazing opportunity for National to step up and say, okay, let's take the bull by the horns and let's be different. They could have quite easily said to the media, okay, we're not going to worry about what the media say. We're going to go down that conservative line because that's who we are, and we're just going to start opposing some of this silliness that's coming through, and basically stand for these things. And I would find that people would get behind that sort of thing, but they're just very much the same as what the governor's saying, and I think they're just too afraid to be labelled, cancelled, or bullied by the media. So I totally understand the frustration that's out there, where no one's really wanting to step up and stand on these issues, because I think of the fear of being cancelled and the fear of being labelled and then abused on social media.
Mike, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, because one of the dangers I see here is that this creates a vacuum, and nature abhors a vacuum, and what you often get in these sort of situations is very loud extremist voices who are the only voices standing up, so people are drawn to it out of desperation. Is that something that concerns you, about that lack of political support for those who are marginalised?
Yes, and in saying that, I mean, some would view the ACT Party as extremist, some would view the Maori Party as extremist, but credit where credit is due. The Maori Party has come out and said they are against the mandates as they are written at this present time, and called the government out on it, saying it's a breach of the treaty. I think their thinking is that the treaty guarantees sovereignty over everything that is taonga, everything that's precious, and surely your body is sacrosanct, and that bodily sovereignty. So full credit to them on calling out on the mandates. They have some other. They kind of got two sides to that. They also want to go for the high vaccination rates amongst Maori and to close the borders and other things, and aren't opposed to mandates straight out. They would like to place their own mandates on different things. But I'll be watching that space with interest. And our friend David Seymour, he's supportive. He's a practical kind of a guy. He's saying that the antigen testing is the middle ground and the solution for our workforce that doesn't want to be vaccinated, and that's a legitimate point. So they are the only effective opposition at present, I've got to say. And even with the recent legislation rushed through the House, they were perhaps the ones that were mostly opposed. National. Yeah, I don't know how political you want to get tonight, Brendan. But,
well, be honest, mate, but be charitable. Yeah. How's that?
yeah. I mean, Mr. Luxons, he's on record of saying that vaccinations in general, if solo parents don't vaccinate their kids, and talking about vaccinations in general, they should lose their benefit. That was one of the first things he said in one of his first interviews. So I don't think they're an effective opposition. In saying all that, a shout out to my friend Matt King in Northland. He lost his seat, but he is quite clearly against the mandates. So how that's going to affect his career in the National Party, I don't know.
That's good. Yeah. Those voices matter, right? Now, Nick, Family First have done some polling data, and I noticed rather glaringly the media, in the time when they're quoting this, that, and everything else, anytime there's new survey data about this, they quote it, except when it's Family First, it seems, and this time is no different. But you've got some polling data that's quite important on this.
We have, and I'd like to quote it so that I don't get it wrong. But there's 5 or 6 different pieces, but I'm just going to give you 2 tonight. And 1,000 people were polled by Courier Market Research, and said basically, should employers be allowed to sack people? Just to get rid of people if they didn't take the vaccine. And this is what came back. Half of them, 50%, said yes, employers should be able to sack unvaccinated, and the other 31 were opposed, and 19 didn't know. And so the next question that was put to them was, okay, so do you think that employees could hold on to their jobs if they were tested? And immediately go, 58% said absolutely,
wow.
Whereas the 27% said still no. But the point is that the government don't have the people behind them on this one. That poll shows that the people are actually behind testing as opposed to forced mandate vaccination.
Yeah, that's a good point, right? And that's something I think it's been glaringly absent. And what I noticed was I saw Bob's press releases about this. I saw the public statements he made on social media about that polling, and multiple times he made reference to it and published it. But sure enough, the media just keeps referring to a poll that sort of says, well, 70% plus of people support the mandates, but it's very vague. It doesn't, like your poll actually asks, well, what about testing? And that's quite important, right? That's a big factor in this. What about you, Mike? You guys have done some polling as well, haven't you?
Yeah, we did a poll through Facebook and through social media. So it's there's a margin of error, I guess, in it, and it's not as maybe as robust as the Courier poll, but still relevant. We polled we had over 2,178 responses, but the questions we were after is why are people, or why particularly in the education sector, not getting vaccinated or vaccine hesitant? That was sort of not so much a general one like Nick and those guys have done. And that the biggest issue in the education sector was this area of freedom of choice. So over 90% of the respondents are basically saying we want to be treated like adults and be able to make up our own mind as to what we inject into our bodies. The next biggest, this is in terms of the question of, why are you not having the vaccine or are you vaccine hesitant? The next biggest area was concerns about not knowing the long-term effects. And I think everybody accepts that that's correct, that nobody at this stage knows the long-term effects of the vaccine. We kind of got a bit of an idea of the short-term, but we don't know what it's going to do long-term. So that's one of the reasons why teachers and early childhood workers have been holding back and saying, I'm not totally opposed to getting it, but I'd like to know more about it before I stick something into myself. So there was a number of other different kind of results. A lot of our teachers would rather trust their own immunity.
Yeah.
So
it's nothing outrageously irrational there. It's all sort of very ordinary, isn't it?
Yeah.
Tell me, Mike, is that so? This is people who have how many? What was was that the top reason that people gave? Was that they just didn't? Yeah, was the long-term data?
Yeah, so they could tick various answers. They could have, but the most common response was the biggest response was the freedom of choice issue, and the second issue was not knowing the long-term effect of the vaccine, and then it kind of started stepping down. From there.
Tell me, Nick, here's one for you. How would you rate the media? And I'll ask you this as well, Mike, so you get a chance to prepare yourself on this one. But how would you rate the media's performance in all of this, Nick? And I guess particularly around the languaging and the way people who are choosing not to get vaccinated in particular are being spoken about, etc.
It's brutal. It is really brutal. And it's biased, there's no doubt about that. Barry Soper said, yep, there's a real lean in that area. So I think it's unfortunate that when the government gave that 50 million to the media saying, here's the strings attached, you have to sort of promote our initiatives, that there was a conflict of interest. And so all they do is promote the things that the government want, and anybody who speaks against it just gets silenced or cancelled or ignored or abused. So I think the media one day we're going to look back at this and they're going to realise just how stupid they were in the whole approach to it. But, the damage is being done. I think, and I love what Mike's team has been doing, because we at Family First are only just adding the testing to it. We're not drilling down into the do's and the don'ts as far as the actual vaccine is concerned. All power to you, Mike. It's great that you guys are going the full Monty, and someone has to do it. And the other thing that I'm concerned about is we don't hear any reports from the media in relation to injuries from the vaccine or deaths from the vaccine, which I suppose there are some. There's people, claiming there are, but why doesn't somebody from the media have a look at that and say, oh, there's something interesting, that goes against the grain. Let's get into that and let's expose it. I don't think the media are doing their job, which is to keep the government accountable, which is to check out by asking the hard questions about what the consequences of their decisions are as well, and the motive of their decisions. All that gets brushed over. And if I could refer to the way that our Prime Minister does her little media show, where she keeps going to the same two reporters, is three things happen there. One, it allows her to get her answers that are already prepared for those questions out, which is an extension of her speech. The second thing is it stops other left-wing media asking any hard questions, and thirdly, it uses up all the allocated time. So it's an old trick, but a lot of Kiwis are watching, but they don't see.
Yeah. That's such a good point. What about you, Mike? How would you rate the media's performance? Because Nick's raised a couple of really, really valid points there about the lack of scrutiny on some of these big questions here, it seems. How have you felt the sort of the treatment of your cause? What's that been like?
Well, we've been ignored a bit in terms of, we've had a couple of press releases go out on the court case and related issues around that, and it's not really been picked up mainstream at all, and you would think that it would, considering the impact of job losses and that sort of thing. So it's not a story at this stage that anybody in the media has even bothered to pick up. The other thing that we're not seeing is the other side, if you like, of the science side. So we're hearing the Prime Minister saying some pretty ridiculous things. That the virus will find you. Literally. That's not very scientific. Calling the virus a tricky virus. Okay, there might be, some element. I don't know. But the other comment. I don't really watch the media, to be honest. But I thought it was interesting when she came up into the north, and there was a little bit of rudeness, I suppose, when she was trying to do something. It wasn't major. It was a lady singing a song, but that joker from Counterspin or somebody tried to ask her some questions, and she quickly shot it down and said, "No, we're only going to have questions from the accredited media." So yeah, she only, and the comments that he was actually asking were quite legit around vaccine harm and that kind of thing. But yeah, clearly they're controlling the narrative, and overall the community is being brainwashed, I think, and conditioned, and that's a concern. Putting aside the whole issue of the virus, the social conditioning is a major concern for me, and this whole single sort of source of truth kind of area. But I think Nick covered it off well there.
Well, yeah, I remember that press conference, and I thought to myself, I'd actually like to hear an answer to that question, if you don't mind, but we never got it, did we? So we're going to get back to the narrative. Tell me, chaps, by the way, those who have tuned in, great to have you with us. Please share your questions. I'm going to open the floor in just a second for your questions to our panelists. I'd love to hear from you. I've already got a couple waiting in the ranks ready to go. So please put your questions in the comments section, and I will make sure that we get them to our panelists. For both of you, I guess, what would you like to see happen from here? Nick, I'll start with you. What do you think would be a good outcome to... we've just started the traffic light system. Is it too late to change? What would you like to see happen?
Well, from what I understand, they are going to bring in the testing, but it's 10 days after the traffic lights.
Oh, is that right?
If they just cancel the traffic lights, introduce the testing, and let's just get on with life. That's what's happening around the rest of the world. But there's just this real hunger for control through the traffic light system. And so if it was up to me, I'd say, okay, cancel the traffic light, even though you spent millions of dollars on it, of our money. It's not the answer. Cancel that. Let's just allow people to be vaccinated or tested, and let's just get on with our jobs, and let's get our country back on its feet. And that's it.
Yeah, that's very, very common sense. Gosh, Nick, that's far too commonsensical for this current state of fear that we're all caught up in. Mike, what would you like to see happen from here?
Yeah, well, what Nick said, but for us, our main focus from here on in is preparing for our next court case in probably be January or February, early February, and we haven't given up on the legal challenge. So this next one is challenging the science around the things like the transmission of the virus from the vaccinated to others. And just to illustrate that, a friend of mine double jabbed. The other day she got the doctor said you probably got pneumonia, but have a COVID test and go up to hospital for your chest X-ray. And she was shocked when they wouldn't let her in the hospital, and they made her stay outside in the gazebo for 1.5 hours, and then in the end she gave up and drove back home. But she had been conditioned to think that because she's double vaccinated, she can't catch COVID, and she's not a risk to anybody. But the reality was they wouldn't let her in the hospital until she produced that COVID test, which just keeps coming back to what Nick's saying. That's the way forward, is the testing, the rapid testing. But so we want to expose that, because the myth, the dialogue is that the vaccine is the silver bullet, And if you don't take the silver bullet, it's because you don't care. You don't care about, we got to protect our whakapapa and we've got to save lives and all this. That's the narrative. But in reality is that once we get up to 95% vaccination rate, vaccinated people are going to be with the vaccine pass. The vaccine pass is actually a license to spread the virus wherever you want to go.
Yeah. And it doesn't seem consistent, does it? Like you've got, even when you're leaving Auckland's supposedly the hotspot at the moment, but unvaccinated have to have a test, but the vaccinated don't, yet both can be carriers.
No, so it's madness. Yeah, and our focus is to expose that by testing it in a court of law, and so we're hoping the media, have some comment about that. We'll have to come back with you, Brendan, and try and get that conversation out there, because the people are deceived into thinking this is the silver bullet, this is the way out. The traffic light system is the way out. We're going to get our freedoms back, all this kind of stuff. But we're actually just going to have a big mess. Yeah. And less freedoms, and people still, still potentially infecting people and transmitting people. So that's our focus, and our focus probably too is just supporting our team, supporting those who are still working through what they're going to do, how they're going to readjust their life, as if they're not going to be teaching, or if they decided to comply. It's all and working people through that process with their employers. So,
Brendan, could I just say something? Sorry to cut in.
Of course you can, Nick.
No, go ahead, man.
I think Mike brought up another really good point that I just want to expand on. The fact that recently we've just been told that the vaccination, the vaccine has a shelf life, right? Yeah. So basically, it's 6 months. That's what it is. And so every 6 months now, you're going to have to get a booster. From what I understand too, with the Delta comes, every other variant that's coming in now. And from what I can see, there's over 100 different variants, which means that that's going to be 100 different boosters, which means that there's just going to be this endless amount of injections that people are going to have to take if their strategy is to inject every 6 months. I'm concerned that that's going to cost a lot of money for a lot of people. And, you're going to have this sort of rotating door where you're just coming out of having the injection to go back in the door to get the next one. And that's not a way to live our lives, eh? We should really be, again, get vaccinated. I don't have a problem with that, but get tested to make sure that both are not carrying. And then from what I understand, there's a 99% recovery rate. So if you do the test and you're sick, go home, self-isolate. If you recover as part of the 99%, well, great. And if you need some help, then go to hospital. But let's deal with it. Let's bite the bullet and let's just get on with it.
Yeah, good point. I wondered to myself, actually, in the last couple of days, there's a great eruption of panic again with Omicron, the latest awful, frightening sounding thing that's coming upon us. But in actual fact, it could well be a much milder and highly transmissible variant, which is actually how the Spanish flu ended. They ended up with a variant of that, which was highly transmissible, so everyone got it, but it was a flu. And so almost everyone survived it, and you got the herd immunity, and that was the end of it. And so who knows? That I think either way it's going to change the game again, because the vaccines are not going to, clearly, if you've got 32 mutations on the spike protein, which is what the vaccines are encoded for, then you're going to have a problem with those vaccines going forward. There's some fascinating few weeks ahead, I think. Gentlemen, before I open up the floor for questions, I'd love to both hear your thoughts on this. One of the funniest moments I've thought so far in all of this has been when the media referred to the recent hikoi as a white supremacist movement. And I thought to myself, gosh, the white supremacists are getting really clever, and they're going all out in this country to try and push their agenda if this is what they're doing now. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on that little moment.
Mike, you go first, bro, so I can just copy you.
Okay, bro. Well, it's interesting because we ended up in Waitangi on that day. I was up there for a book launch that we'd planned months before the hikoi to launch a book that Shining Light Trust has put out on He Whakaputanga, the Declaration of Independence, and we'd planned it for months, and we found ourselves in the middle of the hikoi for sovereign truth sort of thing. There was certainly a lot of Pākehā people there that aren't normally there at Waitangi on the 28th of October. But I think this is one of the strategies of the opposition is to vilify people by calling them racists or white supremacists, because we saw the exact same thing, or the exact same accusation with the farmer protest. The farmer protest, nothing to do with COVID, nothing to do with the vaccines, but against the government narrative. So the farmers were protesting in the north about the SNA, the land grabs and other issues, and sure enough, they were labelled as rich, white, privileged farmers making money on stolen land and polluting the streams. And so it's just a convenient way of trying to shut down debate, is to call someone a racist, label it a white supremacist. Yeah, so interesting times, all right.
Well, Nick, I don't know about you, but I remember I was around when on the charts we had that Kiwi pop song, What We Need Is a Great Big Melting Pot, big enough to take the world and all it's got. And all of a sudden now, when brown and white get together, oh no, it's a bad thing now if it doesn't suit the agenda, right?
Yeah.
Well, when it comes to the media, there's a saying that I picked up from a black star in the States. It says, like, if you don't watch the news, you're ill-informed. If you watch the news, you're misinformed.
Great point.
And as far as the media is concerned, I just don't trust them anymore. And they've lost my trust because of the way that they've been reporting, because of who they cancel. It's all one-sided, and they're just pushing, the narrative from the government. So I just don't even bother listening to what they have to say anymore, unfortunately.
Well, again, more wisdom from you, Nick. Right, let's try and find some questions here. First of all, there's lots of positive comments coming in for both of you. Bernadette says, Aroha for you, your friend, I think for you, friend, Mike, I think that's what it means today. Hillary says, yes, Brendan, you got two good pastors I really respect. Hi, Mike, and hi, Nick. Sandra says, so good to hear what you're saying there, Nick. Renee says, kia ora, Nick, well said. Mike, here's a question for you. Mike, do you know how many educators you are representing in the court case? I've just written my statement today. She's just curious to know. Do you know how many it is?
Okay, so very good question. So the New Zealand, the NZT SOS, anybody that's a member of that incorporated society, they are the plaintiff. So at my last count, it was 500 plus. So they are they will be legally represented if they're a member. And our thinking is that outside of that, a win for us is a benefit to everybody. But technically,
That's
500 plus. Yeah,
500 plus, and people are still able to join. Is that right? Are they able to?
Yeah,
support
absolutely.
You?
I'm trying to think the best way we can do that. We have a Google Form sign up. I'm wondering
Well, I'll tell you what, you send me the link. If you send me the link, Mike, and I'll make sure it's posted to our Facebook page, folks. So you're watching this right now on our Facebook page. We'll make sure it's posted there, along with Family First's petition as well. If you haven't signed that, please sign it and share it.
Can I say something in relation to court cases, please, Brendan?
Go for it, Nick. Of course you can.
I think some of your viewers will understand that we try to stay away from court cases because we're in court at the moment with our charitable trust. And, the key thing is that I want to share with people is the fact that the reason why, we're in Supreme Court now, it had 3 hearings. We went to court. 1 judge decided we lost. And so we went to court again. 3 judges decided we won. And finally now it's before 5 judges to say whether we will lose our charitable status or not. That's where it's at. And the 2 things that they don't like about us is the fact that we believe that marriage is between a husband and a wife. So sorry about that. And the second thing is that we believe that the best way of raising a kid is in a nuclear family. And sorry about that too, but that's what they're up against. That's why they don't like us. And the only reason that Bob and I and the board are fighting it is because there are so many churches that have that same view. And if we go down, so will all those churches and all the trusts that hold those same views. So that's why we've kept fighting it. So, we're mentioning court cases. We're only 1 left, and that's the one that we're fighting at the moment.
Oh, that's brilliant. Yeah, gosh, we need that advocacy, right? With no political voices, it's up to the ordinary lay men and women to stand up and be that voice to challenge those in power. A couple of people have posted the link for that Google Sheet in the comments already,
Excellent.
so if you want to get urgent access, you can do that there. Nick Campy said, I am surprised there are not more affected teachers. There are more affected teachers, Nikki. That's just Mike's group has a smaller sample of those affected teachers, right, Mike? You don't represent just the affected. It's only those who have signed on, right?
Yeah. So there's the ones that have signed on. They're the official plaintiffs. Yeah, probably. In fact, this is. Yeah, I think it's fair to say the Ministry of Education doesn't fully know what the impact will be. No one knew what was going to happen on Tuesday. They were 15th was the date. Nobody really knew what was going to happen on Tuesday. They had done a bit of investigation. I think they were shocked with their preliminary investigation and didn't want to tell everybody, this is how many teachers we're going to lose, because, that would have, caused a reaction in the nation, because the narrative is this is only going to affect a few people. That's the narrative, but the truth is it's affecting, over, thousands in one way or another. The other thing that was very traumatizing was the exemptions. In the original order, you could apply for an exemption from the vaccine, and I know several people who got an exemption. I'm thinking of one teacher he's had a lot of health issues, cancer issues, been through operations, and on that basis he got an exemption of taking the vaccine. But all the exemptions were overturned, a whole lot, and then they were told, it's approved, I think, by the Director General of Health, and they'd already pre-subscribed, how many, I think they said, 1 or 200. We're expecting 1 or 200 exemptions. So the whole thing is farcical. The whole thing is very traumatic to someone who's had a legitimate exemption, and then to be told, no, your exemption does no longer apply. So
yeah, gosh, that's shocking. That's not good for medicine either. Jan and Andrea Lukic says, go family first. So there's a bit of a vote of support for you, Nick. That's one. Oregon, who's a regular on the show, a regular watcher, says, yep, Te Pāti Māori is solid on this. They have been pretty good. I've been really impressed. They've really spoken up strongly. Here's a positive one. Hillary said, I lost my job in education, but God is good, and I start my dream job tomorrow on the rigs for Todd Energy, and I don't have to be vaccinated. So, there you go. Someone who's recovered from this, which is good. Now this is something interesting, because I think, Nick, your focus on testing, and someone has highlighted the fact that there's already a shortage of teachers. And I think obviously healthcare workers too. We don't really want them going down now, do we? In the midst of a pandemic anyway.
No, definitely not. And I think that testing, once they've proven that they're good, they're safe, then just throw them back into the jobs, man. I mean, I feel sorry for some of the doctors and the nurses who have spent years training, doctor, 7 years at university, and all of a sudden they get told you've got to stand down because you're no good. Because why? Because you haven't taken the injection. I'm thinking, what is wrong with you, There's so many hospitals and clinics that are shutting down because we've lost those people who can staff it, and all it is just a test to say they're safe, and away they go.
Yeah, not rocket science. We're obviously too stupid to be in politics. I think that's we don't get it. We don't get the nuance. Otherwise, we'd be in politics. Liz says, "Is the court case against the Ministry of Ed?" And I think Mike would say no. It's against the Crown, isn't it, Mike? Is that right?
yeah, it's against. So it's the three that we're up against is Minister Hipkins, Ashley Bloomfield, and David Parker. So so that's the COVID-19 response minister, the Director General of Health, and the Attorney General. And the initial court case was four midwives and NZDOS, the doctors speaking out with science, and teachers speaking out with science. So the second phase, I'm not too sure whether those three groups are still together or whether we're going on our own. But it's the not education.
Here's one for both of you. I don't know if either of you got an answer to this, but I noticed this is starting to happen overseas. But Caroline, long question there, but at the bottom she says, why can't people that have been injured from the vaccine speak out? Now, this is happening overseas, but not so much here in New Zealand. So do either of you know of groups that are doing that kind of thing, or where people can go for that sort of?
Me personally, no, I don't know of it, because we haven't really been going down that road.
Yeah,
if you know what I mean.
Yeah, of course.
We've just been doing the testing side of it. But yeah, no, I don't know of any group here in New Zealand. I do know that the senator in the States kicked one off, and there's thousands of people there that are logging their injuries. Some are logging deaths. Can I also say too, and I mean, again, it's a bit off track, but having spent 25 years in the police, I monitor what the guys are up to when I'm away, and my condolences to those who got shot in West Auckland today.
Of course.
All of our cops that are injured. But many of those guys too, and girls, they don't want to take the vaccine. They don't want to go down that road. And but unfortunately, it's going to be mandated for the police and as first responders. So I'm just putting that out there. I happen to know, many, and I monitor their pages, and I can see that a lot of them are going to be forced to either get vaccinated or leave the job,
which is not what you want.
Yeah,
that's for sure. You don't want to lose frontline police officers. That's for sure.
In terms of vaccine harm, Brendan, I think the most important thing is to do a report to CALM, which is the MedSafe side of the adverse reactions. There is another unofficial group. The name of it escapes me, but someone listening might know it and be able to comment on it. And that's had a lot of people responding. It's not, it's quite broad. The CALM is the official one, and
I think someone's commented here. I think it might be New Zealand Adverse Reactions. They're on Facebook apparently. So NZ Adverse Reactions might be the place to start.
And the third thing they could do is join NZT SOS and make an affidavit to go towards our court case, because that's not actually something that we've focused in on, because but those who have been vaccinated and had an adverse reaction, that would be a good evidence for our court case.
We've got time for a couple more. I'll try and get through them. We always try and finish on the hour if we can, and then I'll let our guests have the final word before we finish up tonight. But a couple of questions here and a couple of comments. Alexia Hoyt says, is there any information about teachers, unvaxxed, being able to put their registration on hold, seeing as we can't work in that state? Do either of you know about that?
Sorry, can't help you there.
Yeah, so, okay, neither of us know. That's something to pursue. Perhaps we'll try and find that out and get some information to you. Here's a great one. Someone here has asked, actually, have they even provided an expiry on the vaccine passes? Yes, they have. The passports do anyway. And I'm assuming you mean that, and not a government expiry and when they're going to stop using them. But the passes are 6 months from the time you sign up for one. So, which is not even the time. You might have been vaccinated 5 months ago. If you sign up today, you'll get 11 months worth of immunity. It's magic. So yes, all very hinky. Here's one for you, Nick. Monica says, how can we wake more people up?
Well, it's interesting you should say that, because from our Pacific line, our leaders of our Pacific community are our whawhai elves, our ministers, reverends, pastors. And just on Friday, we had a Zoom just to have a chat amongst our pastors to sort of say, and this is not just the vaccination issue. There's just a whole heap of laws getting rushed through in lockdown that are anti-Christian, anti-church, and anti-righteousness, basically. And so we're putting it to the pastors to say, so at what point do we say enough is enough, or we're going to no longer support this? And the last one that got passed through without anybody really being able to say much about it was the genderless birth certificates. And so, Samoa was one of the last countries in the world to get, Christianity. So our version of it is the freshest. And we're here to be salt and light to New Zealand and we're saying, God said there's two genders, the government said there's 76. Who's right? So it's causing our Pacific to actually stop. And this is one of the things I love about the issues that are coming up, because you can't sit on the wall with some of these issues now. If you're fast asleep, in church, you actually have to wake up and make a decision. And this is what I like. And in those decisions, I'm not asking the church to go out there and protest, but I'm asking the people of the churches to make a stand, to do something significant, as opposed to just let things go by. Because to do nothing, you're basically supporting the bully, aren't you?
Yeah. Yeah, that's good.
That's where we're coming from. And for Pacific, it's because that's my role, is to fire up at that sleeping giant, because the Pacific, once they're, unfortunately, you got to poke them a bit so that they get angry. But once your Pacific Islanders are angry, you'll see action.
Oh, yeah, that's awesome. I went to Maori High School here in Christchurch, the Academy of Higher Learning we used to call it, and I played rugby with the David brothers, who are a famous Polynesian league family here in New Zealand. And I tell you, when you got those boys angry, you knew all about it, and as I often did. That's another story for another day. But yeah, I think you're right. I think there's something about the Pacifica peoples who are like the prophets in our midst. And I've actually said this before publicly about in a lot of areas about family and care for the elderly and all sorts of areas where we're broken down in the West. There's a lot that, that's important. So what you're saying, Nick, is good leadership draws people in.
Yeah, we've kept our powder dry for a time such as this. So, it's time for us to wake up.
Mike, here's a question for you, just one last one for you. Could the court case consider the breach of the Treaty of Waitangi? Is that part of this in any way?
Yes, the short answer is yes. And probably the way to get that would be through the affidavit process. And I think in some of those, we have seen some of that cultural and treaty aspect come through with some of the statements. That would be next level to actually for somebody to make a claim to the tribunal. That would be something else, But that's for somebody listening. That might be something they want to consider. I know that whānau ora, has put a claim in. Probably not what we would support in the sense of them wanting the addresses and the different things of the health information of Maori whānau so that they can encourage them to be vaccinated. But the point is, that is an avenue. If you feel like your sovereignty and your treaty rights have been diminished or violated, which they have been through this mandate, that's an avenue that somebody should probably have a go, the Waitangi Tribunal. But other than that, chuck it in your affidavit, and we'll get our lawyer to submit it on your behalf.
So there's more than one way to win this thing, right? Or to approach it. That's important. A couple of comments, positive comments that have come in, chaps, and then we're gonna finish with one last question, then we'll wrap it all up. But here's the comments. Thanks, Nick, for speaking up. That's come from Herman. Francine says, "Great word, Mike. Conditioning is totally what is happening." Nikki Campy says, "It's so good to hear you guys. Makes me feel normal with my thinking." Oh, we might be mad, Nikki, and then you're mad as well. That's the other possibility, isn't it? No, I think we're okay. Bernadette says, "I second this. How encouraging for us to hear an intelligent and balanced discussion." And I never thought I'd hear someone say that about the words coming out of my mouth. So thank you very much. But yeah, I think it's good. And these are the kind of conversations we need to have. Now, chaps, I'm going to ask you one last question. I'm going to give you a few seconds to think about it while I take care of some administrative things. And then I'm going to come back to you. So for those who are watching, they're going to disappear off screen for a few seconds and then we'll come back. Here's the question I want you to think about to wrap up with. What about those who are under pressure right now? What advice or what word would you give to perhaps those who are struggling under the weight of this right now, who just feel it's all getting too much? I'll give you a couple of seconds to think about that while I do a couple of administrative things, and I'll come back to both of you. But while they're thinking about that, folks, just a huge thank you again to all of our supporters at patreon.com/leftfootmedia. You guys are awesome. It's thanks to you tonight's conversation was made possible. If you're not already a supporter, you can do that at patreon.com/leftfootmedia. And if you contribute $5 or more per month, which is just the cost of a cup of coffee, then you get access to an exclusive patrons-only episode of our Dispatches podcast every single week. And today's episode of the podcast was talking about the demise of Judith Collins and the arrival of a new variant and a whole lot of other things. It's exclusively available to our supporters at patreon.com/leftfootmedia. If you're not already a subscriber to our YouTube channel, tonight's conversation with our two awesome guests, I'm sure you'll agree with me, Nick and Mike, it's been amazing to have them on. That'll be available on our YouTube channel. You can find that at mondaynightLiveshow.com, mondaynightLiveshow.com. And then I should say, last but not least, is don't forget to check out our new website, watchlfm.com. You can see all of our content on there. You can find all the podcast episodes that are free to air, lots of stuff, all the video content's on there. Plus, we've got an email list you can sign up for. Now, we don't spam you. We don't send out newsletters. That is so that if we get booted off one of the main platforms in this highly censorious environment, we can quickly let you know about where we will carry on so you can carry on watching the content that we are producing. So, back to our panelists just to wrap up with from both of you, Nick and Mike. Perhaps I'll start with you, Mike. What would you say to someone who really might be under the pump and who's feeling the pressure of all of this right now?
Okay, well, I'm assuming by that they mean, there's the pressure on them to get vaccinated and they're sort of caught in that position. Well, I would say that just in terms of the vaccination, from the short-term evidence that we've seen from most people, there's no ill effect. So, if at the end of the day it's a choice about you paying your mortgage and feeding the kids, you do your own risk analysis and make a good decision for you and your family. If you're still feeling strongly to not get vaccinated, and I totally respect that, that's what this is all about, respecting people's personal choice, there will be a way forward. There will be an opportunity. I've had some brilliant conversations with people who are now turned this whole around to see this as an opportunity to develop a new form of education through online media and that kind of stuff, or move into a different line of career, or move into a different sort of business. There will be a way forward. So, cut yourself a little bit of slack, say a prayer, get refocused, and you're going to be okay. The main thing is you're going to be okay. You just don't give up hope. We're going to get through this. You're going to get through this. It's going to be a bit tough, but you're going to come out the other side, and everything's going to be all right. So don't do anything silly.
That is good. That is good, Mike. What about you, Nick?
Well, I'm going to quote another great person, and it goes like this. Come to me, all of you are tired from carrying heavy load, and I will give you rest. Matthew 11:28. And I want to encourage you, if you're stuck, if you're in a rock and a hard place, go to God in prayer, because you may be thinking this is going to be a radical change. Let me just finish with a quick story. There was a young boy listening to the speaker, just like you're listening to us tonight. And at the end of the talk, after the corridor was over, the speaker said, "Does anyone have anything to eat?" And they brought forward a boy who had his lunch, 2 fish and 5 loaves. They placed that lunch in the hand of the master. Obviously, the speaker was Jesus, and that lunch went on to influence thousands that day, millions to today. Place what little you have in the master's hand in prayer and watch what he does with it.
That is awesome. Wow, gosh, couldn't have said it better myself. Thank you, gentlemen. That was just, it really was. That was such a great conversation. How do people, I'll just get you quickly to let people know how they can follow what you, the campaigns that you're both involved with. Mike, how do people find you online?
NZT SOS is our Facebook page, and you'll find us there. Okay,
awesome. And what about you, Nick?
If you want to contact me personally, it's just nick@familyfirst.org.nz, nick@familyfirst.org.nz. And our Don't Divide Us is the www.don'tdivideus. Don't Divide Us.nz.
No apostrophe, is it? There's no apostrophe, isn't there? And no. Don't. It's just DONT.
It is. Or just go to our, just Google Family First, and you'll be taken there, and lots of good stuff there to have a nosy through.
Gentlemen, thank you. It's been a real privilege, as I said, to have you on. I've really enjoyed this. I hope you've enjoyed being here. Huge thank you to both of you. Thank you to everyone who's tuned in tonight. You guys are awesome. For those who are wondering, next week we're actually taking a break. I'm away doing a bit of work, so I'll be in Wellington. So trying to avoid the that big black building in the middle of the city there. But I'll be doing my bit in Wellington, and then we'll be back the week after with another episode of the panel. And then we've got Laura Dodson coming on Monday Night Live the week after. She's a UK journalist who wrote an excellent book called A State of Fear, how governments have used fear during this COVID pandemic in an unethical way. And so she'll be well worth tuning in for. And then the final show for the year, just to wrap things up, Pete Espel. You might remember him from earlier in the year, my friend Pete from America, the Christian ex-Marine who now works in social work and psychology. And we're going to have a bit of a lighter show. We're going to talk about our favourite Westerns. So we're going to be ranking our top 10 Western movies. So something for you to do over the holidays. So tune in for that. Chaps, thank you both for tuning up. It's been a real privilege and a pleasure to have you on. And you guys are awesome.
Thank you so much.
See you guys.
Thank you.
Bless you, Mike.
Yeah, see you.
When we wake, hear the birds and see the sun. Side by side our fears are done. Oh, the good times just begun. Oh, we know what we have, let's hold on tight. Found what we're looking for in life. Call us crazy, but things are finally right. With you and I, the future is bright.